What happens when a single act of cruelty unfolds at 35,000 feet? On a routine flight from New York to Los Angeles, a dedicated flight attendant, a woman with a spotless 20-year record, makes a decision that shatters a young passenger's dignity. She snatches a meal filled with more than just food, and tosses it into the trash like garbage. But what she doesn't know is that her every move is being watched. Not just by the other passengers, but by the one man who holds her entire career in his hands. In the next 5 minutes, an act of petty cruelty will collide with ultimate power, triggering a chain reaction that will change lives forever. This isn't just a story about being fired. It's about what happens when karma decides to take the controls. The air in John F. Kennedy International Airport's Terminal 4 hummed with a unique blend of frenetic energy and weary patience. It was a symphony of rolling luggage wheels, multilingual announcements, and the low thrum of 1,000 different life stories converging and diverging. For Amara Washington, it was the overture to the rest of her life. At 21, she possessed a quiet intensity that often made people look twice. It wasn't just her striking features, high cheekbones, intelligent dark eyes, and braids intricately woven with a single thread of shimmering gold, but the way she carried herself. She walked with a purpose that seemed to carve a path through the chaos, her backpack slung over one shoulder and a well-loved copy of a textbook on propulsion systems tucked under her arm. Today, that purpose was Odyssey Airlines Flight 815 nonstop to Los Angeles. But LA wasn't the destination, it was the gateway. Waiting for her was a summer internship at Astra Dynamics, a name that sent shivers of excitement down the spine of every aerospace engineering student. It was the major league, the place where the future of flight was being forged, and they had chosen her. Amara clutched her boarding pass, the crisp paper a tangible symbol of her dreams. She found her gate, B42, and settled into a seat overlooking the tarmac. Below, the ground crew, like ants in fluorescent yellow vests, swarmed around a colossal Boeing 777, its twin engines promising to defy gravity and carry her toward her future. She felt a kinship with that machine, a marvel of engineering, a testament to human ingenuity. She wanted to understand its every rivet, its every hydraulic line, its every secret. She unzipped a small, insulated tote bag at her feet. The scent that wafted out was a warm, comforting counterpoint to the sterile airport air. It was the smell of home. Inside sat a clear container filled with her grandmother's jollof rice, vibrant with tomatoes and peppers, studded with chicken that had been marinated for a full day. Nestled beside it was a small portion of fried plantains, their sweet caramelization a perfect balance to the savory rice. "Now you listen to me, baby girl," her grandmother Nana Rose had said that morning, her hands wrinkled but strong, closing the lid on the container. "You know how your stomach gets when you're nervous, and you know you can't eat that airplane food with your allergy. This is strength for your journey. Every grain of rice is a prayer, and every piece of chicken is a blessing." Amara had a severe and unusual allergy to a specific food preservative, one commonly used in mass-produced airline and packaged meals. It wasn't life-threatening, but it was debilitating, causing severe stomach cramps and migraines that could last for days. Starting the most important internship of her life in that condition was unthinkable. So Nana Rose's meal was more than just food. It was medicine, love, and tradition packed into a Tupperware box. It was the anchor that connected her past to the future she was so eagerly flying toward. As she sat there, Amara reread the acceptance email from Astra Dynamics for the 100th time. The words of Dr. Lena Petrova, the head of the research division, were seared into her memory. "Your final year project on unconventional fuel mixtures showed a level of innovative thinking we rarely see at the undergraduate level. We have high expectations for you, Miss Washington." The weight of those expectations was heavy, but it was a good weight. It was the satisfying heft of a challenge she knew she was ready for. She closed her eyes, picturing the schematics, the wind tunnels, the simulators. She was ready. All she needed to do was get on that plane. A man sat down a few seats away. He was unassuming, dressed in worn jeans, a faded band t-shirt, and a scruffy beard that suggested he hadn't seen a razor in a week. He looked tired, blending seamlessly into the background of weary travelers. He pulled out a paperback novel, its cover creased and worn, and disappeared into its pages. Amara barely registered his existence. Her focus was on the plane, the sky, and the jollof rice in her bag that would carry her through. Finally, the announcement came. We are now ready to begin boarding Odyssey Airlines Flight 815 with non-stop service to Los Angeles. The energy at the gate shifted. The low hum sharpened into the rustle of bags and the click of unbuckling seatbelts. Amara stood up, her heart giving a little flutter. She joined the line for her boarding group, her tote bag held carefully in one hand, her future in the other. As she stepped onto the jet bridge, the roar of the engines growing louder, she felt a profound sense of transition. She was leaving behind the girl she was, and stepping into the shoes of the woman she was about to become. She had no idea that on this flight, that transition would be tested in a way she could never have imagined. Brenda Walsh considered the main cabin of the Boeing 777 her kingdom. She was the senior flight attendant, a title she had earned over 22 years of service with Odyssey Airlines. Her uniform was immaculate, her blonde hair pulled back in a chignon so tight it seemed to defy the laws of physics, and her smile was a masterclass in corporate pleasantry, bright, fixed, and revealing nothing. But beneath the polished veneer, Brenda was fraying. 22 years of dealing with crying babies, belligerent drunks, medical emergencies, and the endless, thankless task of serving lukewarm coffee had chipped away at her soul. She once loved the romance of travel, but now it was just a series of recycled air, cramped galleys, and passengers who treated her like a flying waitress. Today was particularly bad. Her car had refused to start. Her teenage son had announced he was failing algebra, and she'd had a heated argument with a gate agent over crew meal allotments. She felt a familiar, sour resentment bubbling in her stomach. She was a professional, a vital part of the complex machinery that ensured the safety of hundreds of people. Yet she felt invisible and utterly unappreciated. Her gaze swept across the passengers filing into the cabin. She categorized them instantly. A cynical shorthand developed over 2 decades. The anxious first-timer, the self-important businessman, the overwhelmed parents. And then she saw Amara Washington. Brenda's eyes narrowed slightly. She saw a young black girl, her hair in what Brenda mentally and dismissively labeled those complicated braids, walking with an air of confidence that Brenda's jaded mind immediately translated as arrogance. She watched Amara carefully place her backpack in the overhead bin, and then meticulously position a small tote bag under the seat in front of her. Brenda's internal alarm, the one that pinged for potential rule breakers, went off. The flight was full, a stressful max-capacity situation. As Brenda moved through the cabin, performing her pre-flight checks, she maintained her plastic smile, but her movements were sharp, her voice clipped. "Sir, your bag needs to go all the way under the seat." "Ma'am, that laptop needs to be powered down now. Your seatbelt, please, tightly across your lap." She was the queen of this domain, and her primary law was compliance. Rules were not just guidelines, they were the thin aluminum shell protecting them all from chaos at 35,000 feet. Or so she told herself. In reality, enforcing the rules gave her a sliver of the control she felt she was losing in every other aspect of her life. About an hour after takeoff, the seatbelt sign pinged off. The cabin settled into the familiar rhythm of a long-haul flight. The drink service began. Brenda pushed the heavy cart down the aisle, her smile unwavering. She arrived at Amara's row. "Something to drink?" Brenda asked, her tone flat. "Just some water, please, no ice," Amara replied, offering a small, polite smile. Brenda poured the water and handed it over, her eyes flicking down to the tote bag at Amara's feet. A moment later, as the service continued, she saw Amara lean down and pull the bag onto her lap. The lid of a plastic container was opened, and a rich, unfamiliar aroma, spicy and savory, wafted into the aisle. For Brenda, this was it, a flagrant violation. The rule was clear. For the safety and comfort of all passengers, only food and beverages served by the crew may be consumed on board. It was a rule she'd enforced 1,000 times, but today, fueled by her foul mood and her snap judgment of the young woman in seat 24B, she saw it not as a routine infraction, but as a personal affront, a challenge to her authority. She finished serving the row and then turned back, parking the cart to block the aisle. She stood over Amara, her shadow falling across the open textbook. "Excuse me," Brenda said, her voice no longer pleasant. It was cold and hard as polished steel. Amara looked up, a piece of plantain halfway to her mouth. "Yes?" "I can smell that from the galley," Brenda stated, not as an observation, but as an accusation. "You know the rules. No outside food is permitted on this aircraft." The passengers in the adjoining seats, a young couple, suddenly found the safety card in the seatback pocket intensely fascinating. Across the aisle, the scruffy man in the faded t-shirt, who had been reading his book, lowered it just enough for his eyes to peer over the top. His name was Harrison Thorne, though no one on that manifest knew it. He was flying under the pseudonym Harry Peterson, a last-minute economy booking made specifically to observe a crew that had been the subject of an unusual number of mixed performance reviews. Brenda Walsh's name had appeared several times, praised for her efficiency by some, criticized for her abrasive attitude by others. He was here to see for himself. And now, he had a front-row seat. Amara was taken aback by the flight attendant's aggressive tone. She had been discreet, her movements careful, precisely to avoid causing any disturbance. She looked from Brenda's stern face back down to her grandmother's food. "Oh, I'm so sorry," Amara said, her voice calm and respectful. "I have a severe food allergy to a specific preservative. I checked the airline's policy online, and it said exceptions could be made for medical or dietary requirements. I can't eat the meal you serve." She was being honest, clear, and non-confrontational. She assumed this simple explanation would resolve the issue. She was wrong. For Brenda, the explanation sounded like an excuse. A story concocted by someone who thought the rules didn't apply to them. Her simmering resentment found its target. "Ma'am, dietary requirement usually means you order a special meal before the flight. A gluten-free meal, a vegan meal. We provide those," Brenda retorted, her voice rising just enough to draw the attention of the surrounding rows. "It doesn't mean you get to bring your own picnic on board. The smell is disturbing other passengers." This was a lie. No one had complained. The aroma was contained, and the couple next to Amara still hadn't looked up, feigning deafness. But the accusation hung in the air, designed to shame. Amara felt a flush of heat creep up her neck, but she held Brenda's gaze. She would not be flustered. "I understand, but my allergy is to a specific chemical, sodium benzoate, which is often in pre-prepared foods, even special order ones. It's safer for me this way. I promise to be quick and clean up everything." Across the aisle, Harrison Thorne watched the exchange, his expression unreadable. He saw a crew member escalating a situation, not de-escalating it. He saw her using public shaming as a tool of compliance. He saw Amara, a young passenger, handling the confrontation with a grace and maturity that Brenda, the 20-year veteran, sorely lacked. Brenda crossed her arms. This was no longer about a rule. It was a battle of wills. The policy is in place for a reason. We have passengers with severe airborne allergies. Peanuts, for example. We can't have unknown food items being opened in a sealed cabin. It's a safety issue. It was a valid point, theoretically, but it was being wielded as a cudgel. Amara's meal contained no common high-risk allergens. "I can assure you there are no nuts or any major allergens in here," Amara said, her voice still steady, though a tremor of frustration was beginning to form. "It's just rice and chicken. I really must eat something on this 6-hour flight." Brenda leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a low, menacing hiss. "Are you refusing to comply with a flight crew instruction, miss?" This was the nuclear option. The phrase was a direct threat, implying serious consequences, even removal from the flight or meeting authorities upon landing. It was designed to terrify a passenger into submission. Amara's mind raced. All her dreams, astrodynamics, the internship, her future, felt suddenly fragile. A report from an airline could derail everything, all because of a container of rice. The injustice of it was a bitter pill. She looked at Brenda's implacable face, the smug certainty in her eyes, and knew she had lost. Arguing further would only make it worse. With a deep, steadying breath, Amara slowly and deliberately placed the lid back on her container. The click echoed in the tense silence of the row. She didn't look defeated, but rather like a strategist making a tactical retreat. She placed the container back into the tote bag at her feet. "Fine," Amara said, her voice quiet but firm. "I'll put it away." A smirk flickered at the corners of Brenda's mouth. Victory. She had asserted her dominance. She had made the arrogant girl comply. But she wasn't finished. It wasn't enough for Amara to simply put the food away. Brenda needed to make a final, undeniable statement of her power. "No," Brenda said, her voice loud again for all to hear. "You won't just put it away. You've already opened it. It's now considered unstowed waste." She reached down, her movements shockingly swift, and snatched the entire tote bag from the floor by Amara's feet. Amara gasped, her hand flying out as if to stop her. "Wait, what are you doing?" "I'm disposing of it per regulations," Brenda snapped, holding the bag away from her as if it were contaminated. "This should have been declared at the gate." She turned on her heel and marched down the aisle toward the rear galley, the tote bag swinging from her hand. It contained Amara's food, her grandmother's love, her connection to home, and Brenda was carrying it like a bag of trash. Amara sat there, stunned into silence. Her face was a mask of disbelief and profound humiliation. She didn't cry, she didn't scream. She just stared straight ahead, her dark eyes fixed on the back of the seat in front of her, but seeing nothing. In that moment, the entire cabin with its recycled air and humming engines felt like a cage. Across the aisle, Harrison Thorne slowly, deliberately, placed a bookmark in his novel and closed the cover. He had seen enough. The observation phase of his flight was over. The rear galley of a Boeing 777 is a tight metallic space, a world away from the passenger cabin. It's a place of hushed crew conversations, clattering carts, and the omnipresent hum of the aircraft. For Brenda, it was her sanctuary, her backstage area. She entered it with a triumphant stride, holding Amara's tote bag. A junior flight attendant, a young man named Ken, was arranging coffee cups. He looked up as Brenda entered. "Everything okay out there?" "Just dealing with a passenger who thinks the rules are optional," Brenda said, her voice dripping with disdain. She walked over to the waste compartment, a small, spring-loaded door designed for trash, and without a moment's hesitation shoved the entire tote bag inside. The bag, containing the carefully prepared Yolof rice, the plantains, and a small note from Nana Rose that Amara hadn't even seen yet, disappeared. Brenda pushed the door shut. The metallic clang was a sound of absolute finality. She turned, dusting off her hands in a gesture of grim satisfaction. Problem solved. Ken looked uneasy. "You threw out her whole bag?" "She opened unauthorized food in the cabin after being told not to." "It's waste," Brenda stated, her tone daring him to challenge her. Ken, knowing Brenda's seniority and temper, wisely said nothing more and went back to his coffee cups. Brenda felt a surge of adrenaline, the kind that comes from a conflict won. She had enforced the rules. She had maintained order. She felt powerful. It was a fleeting, hollow feeling, but for now it was enough. Back in seat 24B, Amara remained motionless. The public humiliation was a hot brand on her skin. She felt the curious, pitying glances of the other passengers. She felt her stomach rumble, a painful reminder of the emptiness that was both physical and emotional. She had been targeted, belittled, and robbed of a piece of her heritage, all under the guise of a petty rule. A single hot tear threatened to spill. but she fought it back with ferocious willpower. She would not give that woman the satisfaction. Less than a minute after Brenda had disappeared into the galley, the man from across the aisle, the scruffy traveler in the faded t-shirt, unbuckled his seatbelt and stood up. He moved with a surprising lack of clumsiness for a man his size, stepping into the aisle with a quiet purpose. He walked toward the rear of the plane, his expression impassive. He entered the galley, his presence immediately crowding the small space. Brenda turned, her customer service smile snapping back into place, though it faltered slightly at the sight of this unimpressive-looking passenger in her workspace. "Sir, can I help you? The lavatory is on the other side." Harrison Thorne ignored the question. He looked at Ken, the junior attendant. "What's your name, son?" he asked, his voice unexpectedly calm and deep. Kenji Tanaka." "Kenji, please go up to the front galley and tell Sarah, the lead attendant, that I need to see her back here, now." He said her name, Sarah, with an authority that made both Brenda and Ken freeze. How did this passenger know the lead attendant's name? Brenda's training kicked in. "Sir, this area is for crew only. You need to return to your seat immediately." Thorne turned his gaze to her. The tired, unassuming look was gone. His eyes were now sharp, focused, and held a power that was utterly at odds with his clothing. "I am in my seat, Brenda," he said, her name rolling off his tongue with chilling familiarity. "My real seat is 1A, but I'm flying back here today to see how my employees treat my customers. And what I have just witnessed is, without a doubt, the single most appalling display of customer abuse I have seen in my 15 years in this industry." Brenda's face went white. The blood drained from it so fast she felt dizzy. "My employees, my customers." The words echoed in the tiny galley, louder than the roar of the engines. It didn't make sense. Her mind scrambled for an explanation. A manager? A regional director? Just then, Sarah, the lead flight attendant, bustled in, a worried look on her face. "Kenji said, Harry?" She stopped dead when she saw him. Her eyes widened in shock and recognition. "Mr. Thorne, what are you doing back here? We didn't know you were on this flight." Thorne. The name hit Brenda like a physical blow. Harrison Thorne, the mythical, almost legendary CEO of Odyssey Airlines. The man whose face was on the cover of Forbes and Fortune magazines. The man who had revolutionized the airline with his focus on customer experience and employee empowerment. He was supposed to be a tech-savvy visionary in a tailored suit, not a scruffy guy in a rock t-shirt reading a dog-eared novel in coach. Brenda's entire world tilted on its axis. She leaned back against the counter, her legs suddenly weak. The power she had felt just moments ago evaporated, replaced by a cold, sickening dread. Thorne's voice was low, controlled, but vibrated with a cold fury. "Sarah, I have a situation here. A passenger in 24B. Miss Amara Washington had her personal property. A meal she required for a documented medical condition, forcibly confiscated and thrown away by one of your crew." He looked directly at Brenda, his eyes like chips of ice. "An act performed not for safety, but from what I observed as a grotesque abuse of authority." Sarah looked from Thorne's furious face to Brenda's terrified one. "Brenda, what did you do?" Brenda opened her mouth, but only a choked squeak came out. She tried to find the words to defend herself. "The rules. Outside food. I was just enforcing the policy." "Don't you dare talk to me about policy," Thorne cut in, his voice dropping even lower, making it more menacing. "I write the policy, and our policy is built on a foundation of empathy, discretion, and de-escalation. You used policy as a weapon to humiliate a young woman. You lied about passenger complaints. You escalated a minor issue into a major incident. You chose cruelty when you had a dozen better options." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle in the silent galley. "You did this in front of my customers. You did this on my aircraft. And you did this while wearing my company's uniform." He looked at Sarah. "Sarah, as of this moment, Brenda Walsh is relieved of her duties. She is no longer an employee of Odyssey Airlines. She is to be confined to a crew jump seat for the remainder of this flight. She will not interact with another passenger. She will be met by HR and security upon landing in Los Angeles. Is that understood? The sentence was delivered. The axe had fallen. 5 minutes. It had been less than 5 minutes since Brenda had triumphantly slammed the waist compartment door shut. 5 minutes between being the queen of the cabin and a terminated employee. Brenda stared at him, her mind refusing to process the reality. Fired. You can't fire me. In the air. I have 22 years. Your 22 years of service have just been rendered meaningless by 5 minutes of malice, Thorne said, his voice devoid of any sympathy. You are a liability I will not tolerate. Now please take a seat. Sarah will handle your duties. The verdict was absolute. Brenda, the once powerful senior flight attendant, stumbled past him, her face a mask of utter devastation, and collapsed into the nearest jump seat. Her reign over Flight 815 over in the most brutal and definitive way imaginable. The atmosphere in the galley had shifted from tense to funereal. Sarah, the lead attendant, looked pale but professional. She nodded at Thorne. Understood, Mr. Thorne. Kenji, the junior attendant, was visibly shaken, trying to make himself as small as possible in the corner. Thorne's anger seemed to recede slightly, replaced by a weary pragmatism. Sarah, I need you to do 2 things for me. First, find something, anything on this plane that Miss Washington can eat. Check the first-class manifest, the crew meals, whatever you have. Find out the specifics of her allergy and make it work. Second, I want you to discreetly move her to our best available seat in first class. Tell her it's a personal apology from the airline. Of course, sir. Right away. Thorne then turned and walked out of the galley, leaving the crew to manage the fallout. He returned to his own row, collected his worn paperback and backpack, and walked toward the front of the plane. The other passengers watched his progress, murmuring amongst themselves. They had all witnessed the confrontation and Brenda's march to the galley. Now, seeing the man from coach move with such authority, they knew something significant had just happened. Harrison Thorne approached seat 24B. Amara was still staring forward, her posture rigid. She looked up as he stopped beside her seat. She recognized him as the man from across the aisle. Miss Amara Washington? He asked, his voice now gentle, a stark contrast to the icy fury he'd unleashed in the galley. Amara nodded, wary. My name is Harrison Thorne. I'm the CEO of Odyssey Airlines. Amara's eyes widened slightly. She looked him up and down, the scruffy beard, the faded t-shirt. This was the CEO. It seemed impossible. I want to offer you my deepest, most sincere apology for what you just experienced, Thorne continued, crouching slightly to be at her eye level, ignoring the awkwardness of the position in the narrow aisle. What happened was unacceptable. It was not a reflection of our policies, our values, or our standards. It was a failure on our part, and I am profoundly sorry. His apology was direct, personal, and unequivocal. He wasn't making excuses. He was taking ownership. Amara felt a crack in the icy wall she had built around her emotions. The flight attendant, Brenda, he said, choosing his words carefully, has been dismissed from her position with this airline, effective immediately. Amara was stunned. Fired? Just like that? The speed and totality of the consequence were dizzying. I was flying in coach today to observe my crew, Thorne explained, preempting her unasked question. I saw the entire interaction. I saw your patience and I saw her aggression. There is no place for that behavior at Odyssey Airlines. Just then Sarah arrived, her expression warm and apologetic. Miss Washington, I'm Sarah, the lead attendant. We have seat 2A prepared for you in first class if you'll follow me. And I've confirmed with our flight deck's manifest. We have a sealed organic fruit and cheese platter that contains none of the preservatives you're allergic to. I've double-checked the ingredient list myself. Amara felt overwhelmed. The whiplash of emotions, from humiliation to vindication, was intense. She looked at Thorne, then at Sarah. She was still processing the fact that her silent tormentor had been fired by the unassuming man in the band t-shirt. "You don't have to," Amara said quietly, almost a whisper. "It's okay." "No, it's not okay," Thorne insisted gently. "But we're going to try and make it right. Please, allow us." Slowly, Amara nodded. She gathered her textbook and stood up. As she stepped into the aisle, she glanced back at the rear of the plane. She could just see Brenda, strapped into a jump seat, staring blankly at the floor. There was no triumph in the sight, only a profound sense of sadness at the sheer, needless waste of it all. Sarah led her through the curtain into the serene, spacious first-class cabin. The seats were like private pods, the lighting was softer, and the air felt different. As she settled into the plush leather of seat 2A, it felt like entering another world. A few minutes later, after Sarah had brought her the platter of fresh fruit, artisan cheeses, and a glass of sparkling water, Harrison Thorne, now with his backpack stowed, slid into the seat opposite her. "Do you mind if I join you for a moment?" he asked. "I've sent my apologies to the passenger who was booked here. I think they were happy with the arrangement." Amara managed a small smile. "It's your plane." He chuckled, a warm, genuine sound. "Technically it's leased from Boeing, but I take your point." He leaned forward slightly. "I looked at your boarding pass earlier. Amara, Washington. You're headed for an internship at Astra Dynamics, aren't you?" Amara was surprised he'd remembered. "Yes, I am." "Aerospace engineering?" "Yes, propulsion systems." Thorne's eyes lit up with genuine interest. "No kidding. My degree is in aeronautical engineering. I started in a wind tunnel at McDonnell Douglas before I ever got into the business side of things. Astra is doing incredible work with scramjet technology. Dr. Petrova's team?" Suddenly, the conversation shifted. They weren't CEO and aggrieved passenger anymore. They were two engineers, two people who loved the science of flight. For the next hour, they talked. Amara, initially hesitant, began to open up, her passion for her subject eclipsing the trauma of the earlier incident. She spoke about her project on fuel mixtures, about her theories on reducing sonic boom signatures. Thorne listened intently, asking sharp, insightful questions. He was no longer just the CEO. He was a mentor, a peer. He was deeply impressed. This young woman wasn't just bright, she was brilliant. She had a resilience and a core of steel that he admired immensely. The thought of her spirit being crushed by the petty tyranny of a burnt-out employee made him angry all over again. As the coast of California appeared out the window, a patchwork of brown hills and sprawling cityscapes, Thorne made a decision. "Amara," he said, his tone shifting back to that of a CEO, "what happened today was a failure of our system. And when my system fails, I have a responsibility to fix it. I also believe that the universe occasionally presents us with opportunities in the strangest of ways." He pulled out his phone and typed a quick message. "I'm the CEO of this airline, but I also sit on the advisory board for the North American Aerospace Alliance. It puts me in contact with, well, everyone, including the CEO of Astra Dynamics, a man I play golf with twice a year." He looked directly at her. "An internship is a great start, but a mind like yours shouldn't just be an intern. I'm going to make a call. I'm going to tell my friend that one of the most promising young engineers I've ever met was just harassed on one of my flights, and I feel personally responsible for making it up to her. I'm going to suggest that your internship be redesignated as a CEO's special project mentorship. You'll still work with Petrova's team, but you'll also have a monthly one-on-one with their head of R&D. You'll be in the meetings the interns don't get to see." Amara stared at him, speechless. This was beyond an apology. This was life-altering. "I can't ask you to do that," she finally managed to say. "You're not asking," Thorne replied with a smile. "I'm insisting. Let's just call it a signing bonus. Because Amara, after you finish your degree, I'd like you to consider your first job offer to be from Odyssey Airlines. I need more people like you. We all do." As the plane began its final descent into LAX, Amara looked out the window, the world rushing up to meet her. A few hours ago, she had felt small and powerless. Now, The future that had seemed bright before was blazing with an intensity she had never imagined. The karma of Flight 815 wasn't just about punishment. It was about a profound and unexpected rebalancing of the scales. For Brenda Walsh, the descent into Los Angeles was a journey into a personal hell. Strapped into the crew jump seat, she was a ghost on her own flight. The other attendants, her colleagues of years, moved around her with a practiced, pained avoidance. She could feel their pity and their fear. She had become a cautionary tale in real time. Her mind was a maelstrom of denial and rage. Fired by a man in a grubby t-shirt? It was surreal. For 22 years she had followed the book. She had been punctual, efficient, professional. One mistake, one difficult passenger who refused to follow the rules, and her entire life was incinerated. It wasn't fair. She was the victim here, she told herself. A victim of a system that didn't appreciate its loyal soldiers. As the wheels of the Boeing 777 touched down on the tarmac at LAX with a gentle screech, a profound finality set in. This was her last landing as a flight attendant. Just as Thorne had promised, two figures were waiting at the jet bridge as the passengers disembarked. A stern-looking woman in a sharp business suit, the head of West Coast HR, and a burly airport security officer. They weren't there for Amara, they were there for her. "Brenda Walsh?" the HR woman asked, though it wasn't a question. Brenda nodded, numb. She was escorted not through the terminal, but through the sterile, anonymous corridors of the airport staff areas. In a small, windowless office, the reality of her situation was laid out in cold corporate terms. Termination for gross misconduct, violation of the employee code of conduct, abuse of a passenger. "You'll get a final paycheck for hours worked," the HR woman said, sliding a thick envelope across the table. "Your health insurance will expire at the end of the month. Your flight privileges are revoked, effective immediately. We'll ship the contents of your locker to your home address." Brenda tried to argue. "It was my word against hers. She broke the rules first." The HR woman held up a hand. "Brenda, it wasn't just her word. The CEO was an eyewitness, and that's not all." She turned her laptop around. On the screen was a video, slightly shaky, filmed on a smartphone. It was her, standing over Amara. Her voice, sharp and condescending, was perfectly clear. "The smell is disturbing other passengers." The video continued, capturing the moment she snatched the tote bag and marched away. The passenger who filmed it had uploaded it to TikTok with a simple caption: "Flight attendant on Odyssey Airlines harasses young woman and throws her food away. At Odyssey Airlines, is this your policy?" The video already had 500,000 views, and it was climbing, fast. "It's everywhere, Brenda," the HR woman said, her voice not unkind but firm. "Twitter, Instagram, it's the #1 trending topic with the #OdysseyNightmare hashtag. The company is already in full crisis management mode." Brenda stared at her own face on the screen, twisted into a mask of cruel authority. She didn't recognize that person, or rather, she didn't want to. The hard karma had just begun. In the days that followed, her world completely unraveled. The firing was just the first domino. The viral video was the second. Her name, though bleeped out in some news reports, was quickly uncovered by internet sleuths. Her photo was everywhere. She was branded Cabin Karen, a global symbol of petty tyranny. She tried to fight back. She hired a lawyer and threatened a wrongful termination lawsuit. Odyssey Airlines' legal department responded with a simple, brutal letter. Not only did they have the eyewitness testimony of their own CEO, but in reviewing her file, they had found a pattern. Over the past 5 years, there had been 7 informal complaints filed against her by passengers, all citing her condescending tone and aggressive enforcement of minor rules. 3 of those complaints were from passengers of color. Standing alone, they were minor flags. But viewed through the lens of the viral video, they formed a damning picture of prejudice and targeted harassment. Her lawsuit was dead on arrival. She tried to find another job. She applied to every major and minor airline, but the industry is small. The moment hiring managers saw the name Brenda Walsh, they knew. Some were polite. The position has been filled. Others were more direct. We don't feel you're a fit for our company culture at this time. The viral video was an indelible stain on her resume. She was untouchable. Her life in her quiet suburban neighborhood became a prison. Neighbors who used to wave now hurried inside when they saw her. Her son came home from school devastated after being mocked by classmates who had seen the video. Her husband, initially supportive, grew distant under the strain of the public shame and dwindling finances. The hard karma wasn't a lightning strike. It was a slow, crushing avalanche. Every door she pushed, every path she tried to take, was blocked by the ghost of her actions on Flight 815. The 5 minutes in which she had wielded her power so cruelly had resulted in a life sentence of powerlessness. She had thrown away a young woman's meal, and in return the world had thrown away her entire career. While Brenda's world collapsed into a singularity of shame and regret, Amara's was undergoing a form of explosive stellar nucleosynthesis, creating new, brilliant possibilities out of intense pressure and heat. But this creation was not without its own gravity, its own psychological toll. She walked into the crystalline lobby of Astra Dynamics the following Monday under a title that felt both like a crown and a brand. CEO's Special Project Mentee. The name preceded her, whispered in hallways, creating an aura of mystique. But to Amara, it felt like an asterisk next to her name, a footnote that explained she wasn't like the other interns. She was here because of an anomaly, a spectacle. The initial days were a strange duality. On the surface, it was everything she had dreamed of. The scent of ozone and hot metal from the workshops, the hushed, brilliant conversations about hypersonic velocities, the sight of a prototype engine part being milled from a single block of titanium. It was heaven for an engineering mind. She was welcomed by Dr. Petrova with professional warmth and introduced to a team that treated her with a cautious respect. Yet underneath, a cold current of imposter syndrome ran deep. When she spoke in meetings, a voice in her head would whisper, "They're only listening because of Thorn. They're just being nice to the girl from the plane." She felt the weight of the story, an invisible baggage she carried into every room. The incident had given her this incredible opportunity, but it had also tainted it with the suggestion that it wasn't entirely earned. The humiliation on Flight 815 was a debt, and this career boost was the payment. It left her feeling perpetually off balance. This internal conflict drove her to work with a ferocious, almost punishing intensity. She was the first to arrive, the last to leave. She triple-checked every calculation, read every research paper twice, and prepared for meetings as if she were defending a doctoral thesis. She was determined to scrub the asterisk from her name with the sheer abrasive power of her own merit. One evening, on a call with her grandmother, the strain showed. "Baby girl, you sound tired. Are you eating?" Nana Rose asked, her voice a warm anchor across the thousands of miles. "I'm fine, Nana. Just busy." "You're more than busy," her grandmother sensed. "You sound like you're running from something. What is it?" Amara finally let the dam break. "I feel like I don't deserve to be here, Nana. This amazing thing happened, but it happened because of a terrible thing. I keep waiting for someone to figure out I'm a fraud, that I'm only here because a CEO felt sorry for me." Nana Rose was silent for a moment, then said with profound certainty, "Listen to me, Amara Washington. Grace is a complicated thing. Sometimes it finds you in the middle of a storm. That man, Mr. Thorne, he didn't see a victim he felt sorry for. He saw your spirit. He saw the granddaughter I raised. You didn't cry, you didn't scream. You held on to your dignity when that woman tried to steal it. He didn't give you that opportunity as a handout. He invested in your strength. Your only job now is to prove him right. The work your hands and your mind do, that's your truth. Hold on to that." Her grandmother's words became her new anchor. The work is the truth. A month into her program, Harrison Thorne called her. Not his assistant, but him, directly to her cell. "Amara, how are you settling in?" "I'm learning a lot, Mr. Thorne. It's incredible." "Good. Listen, I'm calling for a reason. We're turning what happened into a teachable moment here. We're launching a new company-wide training program for our staff. We're calling it the Amara Washington Initiative." Amara's heart sank. She didn't want her name on a corporate training module. She didn't want to be a poster child for someone else's mistake. As if reading her mind, Thorne continued, "I know how that sounds, but I don't want it to be some sterile HR video. I want it to have integrity, and for that, I need your perspective. What should the lesson be? If you were teaching that class, what would you say?" This was a pivotal moment. He wasn't just informing her, he was empowering her. He was giving her agency in her own narrative. Amara thought for a moment, recalling the sting of Brenda's words, the cold finality of the trash bin. "I'd say," she began slowly, "that it isn't about the rules. It's about dignity. That the space between a rule and a person is where humanity lives. And that a uniform isn't a suit of armor that gives you power over people. It's a symbol of responsibility to people. The lesson shouldn't be don't throw away a passenger's food. It should be always find a way to preserve a person's dignity." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Exactly," Thorne finally said, his voice thick with emotion. "That's what everyone needs to hear. Thank you, Amara." That conversation changed something profound in her. By helping to frame the lesson, she moved from being the subject of the story to one of its authors. The true turning point came 3 months in. She was tasked with analyzing thermal dynamic simulations for a new experimental alloy for engine turbine blades. For weeks she lived in the data, the numbers and heat maps swirling in her dreams. And then she saw it. It wasn't a glaring error, but a subtle, ghost-like anomaly in the data, a fractional deviation in the cooling rate under a specific high-stress scenario. The simulation had rounded it off as insignificant, but Amara, fueled by her grandmother's words and her own relentless drive, followed the thread. She ran the numbers again and again without the rounding protocol. The result was a terrifying cascade failure. The tiny anomaly, under sustained real-world conditions, could lead to catastrophic blade fatigue. She felt a jolt of pure adrenaline. This was it. Not an opinion, not a theory. A fact. Her fact. She requested a meeting with Dr. Petrova and Dr. Cole, the gruff head of R&D. In the sterile conference room, with her heart hammering against her ribs, she laid out her findings. She didn't mention the CEO or the flight. She was just an engineer presenting her work. When she finished, the room was utterly still. Dr. Cole, a man who rarely showed emotion, walked to the screen and stared at her final slide. He traced the curve of the cascade failure with his finger. He turned, not to Dr. Petrova, but to Amara. "How many times did you have to run this to find it?" he asked. 37, she replied, her voice steady. He stared at her, and for the first time she saw a look of profound respect in his eyes, a look that had nothing to do with Harrison Thorne. 37, he repeated softly. He then looked at Dr. Petrova. "This just saved us 2 years of research and $100 million, at minimum." In that moment, the asterisk next to her name vanished. The ghost of imposter syndrome dissolved. The validation wasn't the praise. It was the quiet, solid certainty that settled deep in her bones. The work is the truth. She had not just proven Thorne right. She had proven Nana Rose right. She had proven herself right. A year after the flight, when the official offer letter from Astra Dynamics arrived, it felt like an inevitability, a natural law of the universe. The position, the salary, the prestige, they weren't gifts. They were consequences. The consequences of her mind, her resilience, her work. That evening, when Harrison Thorne's card arrived, she read his words. "The worst turbulence brings you to the most beautiful destinations," and understood their deeper truth. The turbulence wasn't just the fight with Brenda Walsh. It was the storm inside her own mind, the struggle to reconcile the shame of the incident with the brilliance of the opportunity. She hadn't just survived the flight. She had learned to pilot her way through the storm, emerging not just unscathed, but stronger, into a sky that was truly, finally, her own. In the end, this wasn't just a story about a flight attendant getting fired. It was about the incredible power of grace under fire. Amara Washington could have screamed, she could have cried, she could have posted her own angry video. Instead, she met aggression with a calm and dignity that shone brighter than any act of cruelty. And the universe, in the form of a CEO in a faded t-shirt, noticed. It's a powerful reminder that our actions, both big and small, create ripples we can't even begin to predict. Brenda's choice led to ruin, while Amara's composure led to a future beyond her dreams. Karma isn't always instant, and it's not always loud, but it is always keeping score. This story shows that the best response to those who try to diminish you is to rise so high that they can no longer reach you. What did you think of this incredible turn of events? Have you ever witnessed a moment of instant karma? Let us know in the comments below. If this story moved you, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and make sure you subscribe to our channel for more unforgettable stories of justice and resilience. Thank you for watching.